Another road, another journey. Have I ever travelled this way before? Will I ever travel this way again? And where does this road take me? To new horizons, new worlds, to hidden parts of myself? Will I ever get to the source of my pain? Will I ever release my pain? Dry my tears, let go of my weariness, and feel joy in my life? Will I ever beat in tune with my heart and be at peace with who I am? And now I am here, on this blue couch, laid down next to an expert, a facilitator, a therapist, closing my eyes and looking into my own private worlds, the darkness behind my eyelids, illuminated through looking within me, nervous, yet trusting the person next to me, willing to face the unknown inside of me, hoping that she leads me through the causes of my problems. My quest led me here to this therapy room, eager to learn something about a chance to heal, to evolve. Having heard about this particular therapeutic approach, regression therapy, feeling drawn to what I have been hearing, it somehow resonates within me, making me want to understand more about it. Could this be a way for me? Another step on my own personal journey. So what better way to find out than to ask those who have practiced and taught this approach over many years, and hearing from people who have already been clients. The journey took me to Clev in Germany, where a meeting of therapists from all around the world took place. Here I hope to find out more information, answers for all of my questions. And so I just waltzed right into the middle of their gathering, the convention of an association of regression therapists named Earth. Here is what I learned. Earth is an association of practicing regression therapists which stretches beyond the boundaries of Europe, where it all began. Regression therapy is a modern form of psychotherapy, where the client, with the assistance of the therapist, looks for experiences in their past, where their problem has been caused. In discovering, reliving, and understanding those causes, they are able to find deep and lasting relief. The term past can mean 2 weeks ago, 20 years ago, the time we were in the womb, or even 200 years ago, within a former life. A substantial number of regression therapists in Europe, and also from all around the world, have joined together to form the Earth Association. To facilitate both contact and further training for members, there is the annual Earth Convention. This is an opportunity to physically meet and talk, where the therapist can attend instructive and experiential workshops, informally exchange experiences, or get to know each other in a relaxed surrounding. Obviously, there is much to share and to learn from each other. In this colourful and lively environment of very different characters, I had the chance to meet some selected members of Earth, experienced regression therapists and trainers internationally famous within this field. They will hear and answer my questions connected with the subject regression therapy. Marion BOON is a regression therapist since 2000 and an international trainer for Earth, an active organizer of international events related to the field of regression therapy.
The trance is already there, so in fact regression therapy is to get them out of trance. They're in the trance of the problem, so that's what we do.
I would like to ask you if I can ask you a couple of
TRISHA CAETANO is internationally known as a pioneer in inner child, integration and regression therapies. She has trained psychotherapists and healthcare professionals in many countries.
But you want to control the space. So you start with this person who's like this, and then you watch the flower unfold. Petal by petal, they open up and become who they are. And so for me, that's the joy.
So I ran back over because I wanted to...
There is Dr. Maurice Netherton, a renowned Los Angeles therapist and founder of the Institute for Past Life Awareness. Since 1960, he has been a true pioneer within the field of regression therapy. He has over 30 years of clinical practice in alternative treatment modalities. His book, Past Lives Therapy, was the first in the field of regression therapy.
I tell people, past life therapy allows you to stop doing things to people and start doing things with people because you want to.
Roger WOOLGER is a psychotherapist, international trainer and author, specialized in past life regression, spirit release and shamanic healing. With degrees in psychology, religion and philosophy, and his training as an analyst at the Carl Jung Institute in Zurich, Roger WOOLGER developed his own method called Deep Memory Process.
What we now call regression therapy, or regression to past lives, is tuning into one layer of this many-layered thing called, I call it universal memory, the great memory, the Akasha.
But now we go through hell, we go even deeper.
Hans TENDAM is an international trainer, regression therapist since the early 80s. He is the author of Exploring Reincarnation and Deep Healing. Hans is the current president of Earth.
The most beautiful sessions are when the deepest pain is healed. And healing of the deepest pain always leads to an experience that you can only describe as being mystical.
So I will trust my therapist and my intuition, that I am in the right place at the right time. And here I go. Not to take it easy, but to reach out for solutions and for healing within my deeper self. Closing my eyes and going deep down. Even so, what exactly is regression therapy?
To relive cathartically the origin of your problems. And cathartically means that you will understand them, you will feel really relieved, you will feel your vitality restored, it's really resolved.
Regression therapy deals with the cause of the trauma and the problem, and most other therapies and medical methods deal with the results or the effects of trauma. So going back to where the trauma occurred, going through the trauma again to break up the energy and the emotions that have been impacted or blocked, and by releasing those emotions and feelings, a person can stop the reactive patterns of responding to the old information, because that then becomes complete, and then they can make conscious choice in now time of what they want to do with their life instead of reacting to the programs of the old traumas.
I understand the kind of work where you take a person, a client, into an inner process, contacting what, in my language, will be the deeper unconscious mind.
The therapist guided me to the core of my current problem, and that was his intention, as we had discussed it before. And from the process, it seemed that I went to the root of my current situation. It was as if I was watching a movie, that I was participating in that. It was my movie, my story. It was me watching in full mind, body, spirit, and the feelings. They were all mine.
I have been a therapist and a patient for a long time. So as a patient, I have sought therapy to get out of the load of the Japanese camps that my parents and my brothers brought in our family. Even with psychoanalysis, I could not find it, although I myself am trained as a psychoanalyst. So I went quite deep for what they called was therapy to go to the deepest. And I couldn't find the catharsis that I needed and the insights that I needed to get it off my back and not live it as in our family. The victims of the Japanese camps were the perpetrators of the children after the war, and I was the first one.
Seriously with whatever the client comes. So they start to access what's in there. And they learn to listen, like we are listening to the client is listening to his inner material, to his inner voices, if you would like to say it like that.
I do an interview that over about 2 hours, the first time I see someone, that gradually begins to bring those memories from the past into their life here and now. I have never hypnotized anybody. I have never tricked anybody. I simply question them as to the trauma and the changes that they need in their life. And by the time I have done that, they're that close to being in it. Usually all I have to say is, you know where you are now. You're exactly where you need to be. All you need to do is go on in and take me with you. What's the first thing that comes to mind? And believe me or not, it works.
I asked for a demo session, and in that demo session, in the workshop, I just really could help me to get on the terror that my mother must have felt during the Japanese camps. And she had that in her body, so when she conceived of me, it was just given to me. It was passed on to me. And I had carried that all along, and also the attitude of not feeling, because all those war victims, they don't dare to go in feelings. She said, if you feel anxiety, you're dead, so you don't feel. And that was how we were brought up, not feeling. And that was so clear in that session, that in that demo session with NETHERTON, that I thought, no, this is enough. This is enough. I live her life. I'm not living mine. This is enough. This is going to change. And I thought, okay, I'm very bad. I can hardly walk. And I don't want to go with crutches. And I don't want to go in a wheelchair. I want to go on my own legs. And willpower is something that you need to survive camps. I needed that to survive my sickness. It was help. I had 3 weeks, every day a session of 2 or more hours. And he made an intake, and he started with birth. He asked me for every surgery or probably a moment of unconsciousness I had had in my life. He asked me for the whole family constellation, of course, and the atmosphere. During that intake, there were about 3 sentences that I said that in a certain period I looked like a lepra patient. He wrote that down. He said, that's one past life. I said, okay. In another situation, the divorce of my husband, the father of my daughter, I said, it felt like I would drown. He said, that's the second one, past life. And in another one, it was a real betrayal, and I really felt like murdering. Really so angry I could murder him. That's the third one. So, besides going through birth, pre-birth, that child that was born before me, how probably I would be, it came out clearly. I was suspecting that, and it came out very clear. The birth, not bonding with my mother, the feelings of always feeling like I should have been a boy, and I don't know where it comes from. Going through that, it was so obvious that my father wanted a son, that even after that, it never occurred to me again that I would have to be a man, or I should have been born like a boy or something. It was quiet, it was his thing. So during the process of NETHERTON's way of working, all those passed on convictions just were so clear and so separated from, that's from my father, that's from my mother, that's from the surgeon, that's from whoever intruded my energy when I was unconscious or physically hurt or whatever. And it was like one big train every day that was going on. And even past lives. Just, yeah.
I could hear everything that was happening outside, yes. It felt very well, actually, to play on your own movie and observe it at the same time. I wasn't in any way hypnotized, or I was there in the present, so no, there was no worry of coming out. I was out and in at the same time. So I found myself living in a very small house, most probably an orphan, without the knowledge of it though, raised by an old man, a strange figure, very severe, that apparently he was suffering himself as I saw it, and he had to raise this child with his way. So this child could not face this man because he was sick, he was old, he was always very angry, and the child was afraid. So during the regression that we did, I saw myself the way I reacted, how scared I was with the tone of his voice even, and what was happening at that time. And my story then, it was how I balanced to escape or resolve that situation. So with whatever chance I had as a little child, I was sneaking out of the window. The little house was by a beach, so I was going down to the beach trying to find people and friends and play with. But I saw myself really, really scared and terrified with the behavior.
And the thing is that what we do is we go wherever the person needs to go to access the trauma and resolve that will resolve the issue. And there are specific methods of how to get to that particular place in time.
If you just sit and listen and keep your mouth shut, which is hard for some people to do, but they will tell you. I will start a session by saying, look, as we've been talking, you have put yourself where you need to be. You already talked yourself into the place where we need to start to make you happy and healthy here. Now, go on into it and take me with you. And people are always astounded when they do it. But you ask with integrity and you ask with honesty too.
Basic methods that I label are regression, which means most simply, okay, go back to the very first time you had this feeling, etc. Unhappiness or fear, whatever. And then finding out what story develops. And very often that story ends with a death, and very often it's a traumatic death or a confused death, but not necessarily. The second method is a cluster of methods that I call personification, and includes things that are common in Gestalt or voice dialogue, etc. So the basic instruction there is, just imagine that you're in your own home or in your study or in your bedroom. The door opens and the main reason of your problem now enters the room. And usually it's kind of person. It may be your dead grandmother, it may be your father, it may be a figure that you can't understand, it may be the devil, it may be a dark cloud, whatever it is. And you're going to explore that and dialogue with that. And the third is what we usually call energy work. It basically means that you have the people imagine that, for example, their problem is the kind of presence, a kind of energy or substance that's inside their body. So you feel guilty. Okay. Just try to feel where can you find that guilt most strongly in your body, and they will, for example, say on their chest. There is a weight on it. Just imagine that there is a real weight on it. What kind? It may be a rock, it may be a person. How heavy is it, etc. And so we are going to take away the rock. So in energy work, you take the problem and you visualize the problem, and you try to have them feel the problem as a substance or an energy that is close to them or inside them, and then you're going to manipulate it. It's just a trick, an important trick to make the problem that is intangible tangible. And what is essential is the relationship to bodily experience, body feelings, like kinesthetic experience, warm, cold, but feelings in the body. The body is, especially in energy work, that's where we do it. That's the territory where we work with. In every good session, elements of all three methods are there. So it's not either one method or the other, but I found that these three together are the most simple toolkit you need to resolve anything that is not purely medical.
I heard you say, can I use my ability? Can I use my power? Yeah. I also heard you say, I'm not valued for my work. Could you repeat a few times? I am not valued. I'm not valued. I'm not valued. And change the words into your own words, how you feel it right now. I named this method a direct focus method. It is the approach of the verbal information, the feeling that goes with it, and the somatical, the body feeling that the client has. So somebody may say, oh, my life is a misery. So how does it make you feel? How does it make me feel? Well, miserable. Well, where do you feel it in your body? Especially my stomach. My stomach is upset. And I have headaches. So then you have two somatic places and an information verbal on the life. And then you use verbal techniques to focus directly to the issue. And then we have an emotion, a somatic, a mental thought, and we can start. That's enough to start a session.
I am not allowed to use my power.
That's the strongest. So keep on saying that, please.
I am not allowed to use my power. I am not allowed to use my power.
And what emotion does it give you?
I start crying.
Yes, let it come. I'm not allowed to use my power. Yeah.
I am not allowed to use my power.
Yeah, and where do you feel this sadness most strongly? Let it come. Your body knows. Where do you feel it most strongly? In your belly. Please put your hand on your belly. So the belly is keeping the charges. I'm not allowed to use my power. Yeah. Feel it. She's already feeling it very intense. So I'm going to count from 5 to 1. And at 1 you will get images of the very first situation that you had when you felt your belly rambling. And you had this thought, I don't feel I'm allowed my power. Allowed to use my power. Go back in time, 5, 4, 3, to the place and the time where you were not allowed to use your power. 3, 2, 1, let the images come. You feel this sadness and your belly rambling. Where are you and what is happening? As a rule, there is a physical indicator, an emotional indicator, and a mental indicator. And in fact, you only need one, because when you have one and you exaggerate it, the others will show. So that's why I name it the direct focus. And then, of course, you could start with energy work and visualizations, but that's more for groups. In a one-to-one session, you can just start.
It's not like a real body, or I can change bodies, but I'm on Earth. And I'm sure about that. And I'm a very important person.
Are you
I'm a man. I'm a man.
Yeah. What age are you?
I don't know, old for that time, but maybe 40. I have the feeling I'm kind of traveling around to, and people come to me to, they want to be healed or they have questions. And I have this place where nobody can find me.
Yeah. Where is this?
It's in a mountain. It's a desert-like area, and
is that where you live?
Yeah, I go there from time to time to reload my energy, and I need that to be alone to, like to recharge or...
When I was working in India, I was doing a certain method I call core issue. You go to the deepest pain you have. And you go as deep as you can, and you feel it as completely as you can, and you go as possible deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and it will be more horrible and more black and more lonely and more cold, or whatever it is that experience is. And in some moment there is a complete spontaneous inversion, and people come into an absolute state of calm, of serenity, of happiness, etc. So these Indian people will say, they are going into Satori in half an hour. If you go to a guru, it takes us years. So I said, yes, that's because what you are taught there is to go up, and I teach you to go down. So in the deepest shit, you can find a solution.
How will I know that I don't just make it all up? A fantasy, a dream.
That's a very complex question, and there's been a lot of controversy about whether therapists can induce memories in clients, whether you can plant a memory in a client and the client will believe it's real. It's called the false memory syndrome. It would take a whole other interview to go into that. But I believe if you get a person into a fairly rich state of trance, the memories that come up will be authentic. They won't be fantasy. Fantasy belongs more to the conscious ego, but there's a kind of remembering that belongs to the deeper self or the soul, which you can't fabricate. You can't fake that. So it depends on the state of consciousness the person is in. Another thing is that many people carry memories in their bodies, and when you focus on that area, for example, if you focus on a neck pain, you might suddenly get an image of a sword hacking at your neck, or you get a chest pain and you get a picture of a rock crushing you. Those images come so quickly and spontaneously, it's highly unlikely that the person made them up. And in fact, 3 people with completely very similar neck pains will come up with 3 totally different images, because the memories, the pains there are specific to specific past lives. And I personally believe, in my experience, is the body never lies. The body doesn't invent things. We don't make up pains in our bodies. They feel real. Sometimes in a past life, a person will be remembering a horrible situation. I have a good example. A woman remembered being a soldier in a prison who was chained to a wall, and he was awaiting execution. And he was going to be hanged the next day. And I said, move forward in your memory, see what happens next. And she goes into a kind of a dreamy state in the regression. She says, oh, I'm getting my hands out of these chains. Oh, there's a little window in the cell, and it seems I can open it, I can just squeeze through. Oh, now I'm running through the mountains, and I find this hut, and there's this old man, and he takes me in and heals my wounds. Well, I listened to this story, and I think, this doesn't sound real to me. This sounds like a fantasy. So I went back again, and I very carefully, and I psychodramaed the chains, and I said, show me how you get out of the chains again. And she goes back and she relives it. She said, I can't get out. I can't get out. I'm going to die. And then we followed the story. Follow what happens to your body. The next day they take this man and they take him and they hang him. What had happened in the past life memory, the chained up prisoner had become delirious and gone into a delirium, and the delirium dream state, he'd imagined he'd had a fantasy of escape. So we could tell the difference when we brought the body into the story, because the body didn't lie. This was an out-of-body fantasy. People, when they're unconscious, when they're deeply traumatized, delirium is another state, they will leave the body and they will go on imaginary journeys, which are real as psychic events, as dream events, but they're not real as past lives. So there's very subtle distinctions within a past life itself. There's different states of consciousness, even in a past life memory. And the more we've looked carefully at this, the more we can make quite fine distinctions between what is memory, what is fantasy, what is imagination.
I don't think fantasies heal. Of course, in a session, you cannot be like a kind of super detective or judging all the time, is this real, etc. Because even if it's real, it may be polished. If I'm in the victim mode, I may embellish my sufferings. And if I'm a very positive or I'm narcissistic, I may embellish other parts of the story, and they may be polished or more romantic, and it still can be basically true. And of course our profession is it to make the stories as truthful as possible. But when I hear a story that is more or less symbolic, is fake, or just is impossible, I don't accept that. I go to the level of real experience whenever I can get there. And if I can't get there, I did something wrong, or the client was not ready for it, I don't know. I don't care at all for fantasies. Nice for kids, not for adults. We try to go to the real thing. And of course, very often you don't know, you cannot test it, you cannot. But anyway, the story should fit. The story should be reasonable, should give a good explanation. Yeah, reality first and reality only.
Yeah, it's not something miraculous. It's so beneath the surface that you can reach it very easily if you tune into that. So if a therapist like we are trained and NETHERTON and TENDAM just hear you talk and know there is another load on it, and they touch it, you go. If it's not taken serious, and you haven't taken it yourself serious, then you can walk over it very easily. But it's not something of being in another world. It's not. At the same time, I'm here in this room. and at the same time I'm with you or with NETHERTON or with Hans, and I go in a memory that is maybe not of this life, and maybe in other clothes, and maybe in other ethics. But the body tells me whether it's true or not. And when you feel the same rage or the same sadness or the same human feelings that you can feel in this life too, you know you're right, you're not spoken. And if I feel nothing and it's like a mental thing going on, then I feel I'm not there. Then it's more downstream. Yeah. And that's a real difference, I notice that. And it's not something difficult to do.
It seems that it's a very effective method for trauma resolution, if we're talking about trauma, among other results that the therapy has. And what I did, because that's how I work, I researched it before I went to see a therapist. So if we have any doubts, the information is there, it's in the internet. I would recommend to the people to see an accredited therapist that has gone through the proper training, and this is very important, and to approach the subject with a very open mind and see what happens.
Falling apart, being at odds with my partner, my body, my life. Life is just a vast maze. Don't understand myself. Others seem to be on a pointless stroll through the emptiness of their lives, or struggling with unexplainable body pains, or held back by strong ties and hang-ups that just don't seem to shift, bound by fears or anxieties, or feeling disconnected to others, alone and ungrounded. So many problems waiting to be solved. So who is a suitable client for regression therapy? Am I one, right here on this couch?
Phobias, anxiety attacks, panic syndromes, difficulties in relationships, addictive problems, alcohol, drugs, the whole range of human problems that are generally presented to psychotherapy.
People who really want to heal. I think that's really important. Are they there because they want to heal, or are they there because they've heard of this weird thing and they want some sort of a magical solution to their problems? I'll get past life and then my husband will love me again. I mean, it just isn't the way life works.
The main reason would be ongoing depression, things that don't change. It goes on too long, chronic diseases even, problems in life that repeat themselves, the patterns in life. That's a good reason to do regression therapy. When I started my studies with Hans TENDAM, he once said, when it's not logical, it is suitable for regression therapy. Because there is no medical cause, it's not logical, but you do it, and you don't like it, and it's devastating, you don't want to do it, and yet you do it. So that pattern.
Things like what I'm doing here, or I feel alienated, or I don't feel at home, what's my purpose in life, that kind of stuff.
Are there behaviors that are illogical and out of context and have no apparent origin in this lifetime? Are there medical things that are occurring that the doctors simply can't find any cause for? Are there, I know a woman who used to have terrible eczema all up her arms and down her back. Very painful, very itchy. She'd been to every doctor, tried every medication, herbs, acupuncture, and the whole 9 yards. Nothing had worked. And she said, well, you're my last hope. And so I said, well, you know, we'll do what we do, and what happens, happens. And so she regressed back into a lifetime as an American Indian. And they had been invaded by white people, and her baby was dying. She was holding her baby, and she had gotten smallpox, and she'd broken out all over her body with the smallpox, and her feeling was, my baby's dying, I can't protect my baby, there's nothing I can do. And this enormous sense of hopelessness, and of losing everything she had, her clan, her husband, most of all, her child. So when she came into the present life, her husband started an affair with another woman, and that triggered this reactive response in her body, of her body on fire and burning. And so after doing that past life, the hives disappeared and never came back. Very effective.
People go to this type of therapy because other types of therapy didn't work. They've been to doctors, they have been to psychologists, they have been to psychiatrists, and it don't work. That is a very common reason they come to us.
And hearing from people who have already been clients.
I went through a trauma, the result of which was a post-traumatic distress syndrome, which is something very hard to treat. So if there was a need, and I tried the method.
In our family, the victims of the Japanese camps were the perpetrators of the children after the war, and I was the first one. So I had been physically, sexually, mentally, emotionally abused. And I've done that since I was 20. I wanted to get my health and my mental health. I didn't know at that moment I had cancer, but I still wanted to get out of all those miserable feelings, the aggression that I felt, the sadness that I felt, the anxiety that I could feel. And my situation had so much worsened that it was cancer, and they told me I had to live maybe 6 months. And that was medio June 2001. And the internal specialist said, you have to go to the oncologist. I said, no, I won't go there. And he said, why not? You need treatment. I said, chemotherapy and radiation and surgery is not treatment. It's just symptomatic and very destructive treatment. That's not treatment. So I said, I don't know what I will do, but I won't do it. And the only thing I knew was I want to live. I have no idea what for, because I was very, very ill. About 40 kilos, skin and bones, could hardly walk anymore. My muscles were going less and less, they were almost not there anymore.
And are there any people seeking help who should not attend a regression therapist?
There's a certain kind of new age client that wants to glamorize their resume by getting rather special past lives. And they always want to go back as Egyptian priestesses or something glamorous. And I don't work with them. That's spiritual narcissism as far as I'm concerned. There are some people, there are borderline cases for whom to go directly into past lives would be contraindicated because certain types of what we call schizophrenia, they've already got too much information that is flooding them from possibly past lives, possibly other levels of the psyche. And they need to create boundaries and create a sense of self. And if you start taking them to even more stories, they will get further overwhelmed. You'll be going the opposite direction. So I would rarely, special cases, I might work with a schizophrenic if I see something that could be specifically connected to a past life. But in general, I avoid working with them.
The difficult clients are those who use tranquilizers, medication that is influencing the consciousness, because you go into symbolism. They cannot touch the depth of their body feeling.
Let me put it very blunt. When your mind is a mess, don't go. It may become more messy. You need something else first. And the other type of client that I will not recommend, if your mind is a closed case, is fixed, is dogmatic, is a prison, don't go there. You need some open-mindedness and you need some common sense.
If you deliberately determine that you will only believe the truth of objective science, and you don't listen to your own body, then I wouldn't waste my time on that. I did before. But I wish them well, but not with me.
Going back to the cause of my problem will help. Why should it? Maybe it will be more than just uncomfortable. Maybe it will make it all worse.
I know some things you really have to do. Yes, cleanse organically in the body, cleanse emotionally, cleanse mentally, and get on the path of your soul and do it. And that's what I did. And it's even every day I can be so much in the here and now, just so open, with an open heart, an open mind, not clogged, not anything. It goes for me. It's I'm alive, and life is an adventure, and doesn't matter. I will move. I'm 62 now, and I will move to Canada. Okay, I'll do that. New opportunities.
Lifetimes, and then you go into lifetimes when you have been much more aware than maybe this lifetime, and that opens you up, it stretches you. And then the other thing is that you go to between lives and pre-birth experiences. And when you go to between lives, if you stay right above the life, you stay in the astral, which continues the emotions, feelings, and viewpoints of that lifetime. But if you move beyond the astral and move into between lives, there is a fascinating awareness that I have found. Clients, I used to believe that you had to do a linear regression going back to the very first time it happened. And so I was using that method with a client, and so I said, okay, now go to an earlier experience when you feel this aloneness. Okay, now an earlier lifetime. We kept going earlier and earlier. We went pre-bodies. And then I said, okay, now move earlier and look down at your feet. Silence. I said, what's happening? I don't have feet. I said, oh, well, your feet are cut off. What do I know? So I said, okay, well, look down at your hands. She, silence. I said, I don't have hands. I said, okay, are you in a body? No. Are you between lives? No. Are you in another dimension? No. So I finally got smart and shut up and said, what's happening? She said, I don't know. I just know I am.
One young man had a lump, growth tumor on his neck, and I learned a big lesson with him. I went in and sat down and said, what you got on your neck? He said, I don't know. It's got a bump. I said, well, let's see. I said, what does that feel like? He said, I don't know. Sit back there. So he sat back, leaned against the wall, and I said, if something were going to happen to you that would cause your neck to do that, would cause a bump like that, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What would happen? They'd hang me. Oh, okay, well, let's hang you. Okay. So now, get this. He's not the least bit scared or apprehensive about what I'm doing. And I went, there you go. And he went, and he's up. And he said, oh, well, what's the next thing? Oh, and the next thing. And he went through about 10, half a minute to a minute, quick little things that would pull a bump on his. And I said, well, that was good work. When are you having your surgery? He said, tomorrow. I said, well, good luck. I'll see you when I get back. So I went on home, and I came back 2 days later, and he's sitting there. I said, how's your surgery? He said, I didn't have it. I said, what do you mean you didn't have it? He said, well, I went up there, and that old doctor came over, and he started picking on my throat, and he said, where did your tumor go? And the kid said, I don't know. You tell me. He said, well, I can't find it. He said, and he called another doctor in. Another doctor came in, and so they took an X-ray, and it wasn't there. And finally, the doctor said, well, we'll just do surgery anyway. And this kid said a very distinctive word, like you, and no, you won't. I'm going back. So he got up, got his clothes, walked out, went 4 blocks down the street to the door of juvenile hall, knocked on the door and said, let me in. These people are crazy out here. And he never, and I went down and said, yeah, how's your throat? My throat's fine. Okay. What I learned was you don't have to do a prolonged, ongoing process with some people. He just boom, 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 gone. Which I thought was rather astounding.
Yeah, it works well with phobias. This method works well with a lot of things, but phobias is usually one section. Yeah.
The only thing we cannot cure is phobia for past life therapists. That's a bit more complicated. We need 2 sessions for that.
It was very effective. Whoever goes experiences in this life a trauma that cannot be resolved, anything that triggers the event creates on the physical body the sensations as if it is happening now, and it could be unrelated to the event. For me, even to listen to the news in the television because it was war related, so everything that relates to the event had the same effect to me as the first time I experienced it. So although my brain had processed it, that it was over, we're well, we're here, everything is okay. The emotional level was not where my brain was. Okay. So after the regression that we did, that part was gone.
So you start with this person who's like this, and then you watch the flower unfold. Petal by petal, they open up and become who they are.
The turnarounds can be so fast and astonishing. I had a woman who was born with a magnificent voice, and she grew up in New York City, but she was terrified of performing in front of groups of people. She would sing for her family and small circles of friends. And it so happens that her family was quite musical, and one day, this was some years ago, they invited Leonard Bernstein to come and hear her. Bernstein was at the party and he heard it. He said, "This woman has an astonishing voice. Why isn't she singing in the Metropolitan Opera?" And the family said, "Well, she's crippled by this terror of performing in public. This is the biggest group, 20 people were there, that she's comfortable singing in front of." And he said, "This is ridiculous. She's got to get out there." Well, her family pushed her and they heard of me. They sent her to me. In one session, we got a story where she was a woman who, in a Puritan community in early New England, had been caught in adultery and had been horribly publicly punished. She was first of all beaten and whipped, and then it seemed privately the fathers came in and raped her, and then she was thrown out of the community. She carried with her from this past life the imprint of public humiliation. It was obvious in one session why, of course, she couldn't speak in public. So we took her through, we did the various things we do in our work to re-empower her and get those nasty Puritans out of her mind. Within 6 months, she was auditioning at the Vienna Opera, and within 2 years she was singing at the Metropolitan. One session turned her around. That's how fast our work can be.
It's efficient, it's focused, it's effective, it goes to the cause, to the process which will change the cause. And no matter where that cause is, if it's in Rome 5,000 years ago, or if it's 5 minutes ago as you got out of your car, this process will address that and resolve it.
That's what makes regression therapy special. I think especially the way that it cures so fast. I have clients who have been walking around with migraine over 20 years. 25 years depression, a young man. And this man is not even 40. So as a teenager, his depression started. And he was in homes, he was in psychiatric help, he used medicines, and he was getting himself out of that. And he found me, himself. He did about 8 or 10 sessions, which is quite a lot. Mostly people heal before that. But there was a lot he had to deal with. And then he phoned me. He stopped therapy because he was going on a holiday with his new girlfriend, and he felt bright and very good. And he said, "So now I want to use the money for holidays." And it's splendid. His life is starting. So that is my answer to what makes regression therapy special. What I like most, I must say, that's the results. when you got a person over the point where he couldn't pass himself. The rest he can do himself. And the client walks his own life. But just for this bump in his life, we search and get him over the threshold or through the mud or whatever it is, and he can continue.
You know, once I had a Japanese student, and we were doing a past life regression, and he was in a big training program of mine, and this was a private session, and he went through the body death, and I said, okay, what happens next? And then all of a sudden, his whole body lifts up, and his face, I'm going to cry, this always makes me cry, his face opened up. And I never said a word, because my translator's sitting there, and we looked at each other, and that young man, in that moment, he expanded his energy, and the whole room was filled with light. And it was like it mirrored my own, and my translator too, it mirrored who we really are. And in that moment, that young man reached enlightenment.
So not that people leave feeling hallelujah, but that there is a life change.
Notice what it does to you. Body, mind. Mind, how are you feeling with this?
You.
What did you say?
You.
New and complete?
Yeah, it starts to I have to say it in German.
Ja.
Es fängt an zu klingen in mir.
It starts to bell in me, to ring.
It's not ring, it's softer. It's
Softer.
swinging and swing und klick.
Swinging and clinging. Winkling bells, twinkling bells. Something like that?
Yeah, it's like very tiny bells, very high sound, and yeah, it's also like, so hard to describe as an image, but it's this sounds and music and stars and universe, dark and colorful spots, and it's this energy.
It's oneness in you.
Yes. And water too.
And water. Great.
Yeah.
So enjoy this, Masha. And while you are enjoying everything you have just described in 2 languages, feel it.
But he went to the class, of course, the next weekend, and he's a student doing a regression in practice, and he's crying. And so he came out of the session, and I said, what's it like to have reached that moment of enlightenment, and now you're in your body feeling feelings and crying? He said, I'm still in a body. He said, I still have my feelings. But he said, I will never look at life the same again.
It helped me enormously to make an emotional cleansing. It was done very thoroughly and very needed. And I came back another woman. I felt different, I was different.
So lead me back to the origins of my pain, and let me see the source of my fears, my conflicts and body pains, bringing together all the disconnected parts of me. And how will you do that, dear therapist?
I have huge confidence in the process. Even if the answer doesn't come, the client is thinking, what shall I say? The soul does the job already. The body is resonating, it's already going, and I can see that now.
Okay, so you are there and you are traveling for healing. You feel sad now. So from that moment, go on to the next moment. What is happening there?
I was riding in the mountains.
Riding?
With a donkey.
With a donkey.
I got somewhere, it doesn't matter, and there are other people like me, and we meet from time to time.
And then feel your hand. Your hand is indicating something. You're moving your hand. What is happening? Continue.
I don't know, somebody did something to my stomach, but I don't know if it's them or someone else, I don't know.
Yeah. And what do you mean somebody did something to my stomach? From the outside? Or from the inside?
Yeah, at first I thought it's something like wood, but I don't know, they had a weapon like a sword or something.
Yeah.
And my belly was bleeding.
Yeah. So I have a huge process, trust, and that is what my client feels. So they lay down, and one man said, I already feel healed. But it's because of that facilitating trance.
There was a trust that was built before we started the session. I had met with a therapist and we had discussed not the details of the situation because he didn't want to go into that in the present life. But there was trust in place before we started, and it continued through the process.
One of my favorite questions is, okay, what do we need to do now to resolve this so that it's free and clear? And they'll tell you.
The golden rule is you can never take anybody into a space you haven't been to yourself, if you're a therapist.
I assign healing to the client. I'm not here as God who's going to wave my magic wand, you're going to feel better. I have tools and methods and also energy to hold your space. And you come and you do whatever it is you need to do in this space.
It's a scientific attitude of, I'm always in a session thinking about hypothesis. It could be this, it could be that. How can I test that out? So I will ask some questions to find out if my hypothesis is right. And I have always more than one hypothesis. So I don't think, oh, they have this migraine, so probably it will be that. It could be that, or that, or that. So how are you going to differentiate? Or it could be something else. This testing of hypothesis is a kind of part of your mindset. That is very important in the way I work. And I call it in my training programs the detective part of our work.
I never felt that he was imposing any feelings or situations on me. I always felt that I went there by myself, and whatever I was experiencing, it was me. His influence was, in a way, he worked as a guidance, asking me questions to clarify, since they were not clear.
All the resources needed for fundamental healing are inside the client. And I heartily dislike any therapy, also any regression therapist, who is taking resources from the outside, like readings or laying hands or diagnosis with long surveys and all that. It's all there. We have to help the client to get there. Maybe we have to help him to take seriously what's inside him. And the simplest way to do that is to listen what they are telling.
People are not limited to this planet, this solar system, this universe. And so that's where, again, the soul comes in, that it's far beyond matter and time. And so don't limit the possibilities. Stay with your client and do what they need to do.
We did a group regression experience, and everyone was directed to go back to an image of a past life. And a man came up and he said, "I'm a rock." So I tried to talk to this rock. I couldn't get very much movement out of a rock, as you can imagine. So I said, "Okay, move forward a few thousand years." Nothing's changed. Well, later I realized, this was in the early days of my work, later I realized he was hiding. He didn't want to go into a real story. And again, a part of him had left the body and gone and hidden in this rock. There was a real story somewhere else. But in those days, I didn't know how to get to it. So I'm always suspicious of people who either go to the angels or become rocks or trees. They're usually running away from something. And particularly, and some people will disagree with this, particularly people who go into memories of extraterrestrials and spaceships. If they've already done a lot of work on themselves in this life and other past lives, which are concrete, I will accept it. But if in the first few sessions they want to go to Mars, or they want to go to Alpha Centauri or some other planetary system, I'm very skeptical. I treat it as a possible escape and say, I want you to come down into your body and see what's happening here. And usually there's some trauma in the body that they're escaping from. So those kind of cases can be challenging.
No one method works. And if anybody says that, well, maybe you need to look for another therapist, because there are many levels that we exist on and many things we need to do. So I combine the body, the mind, the soul. I combined the physical movements, the gestalt of it. I combine the voice dialogues.
The therapist is a tool in regression therapy. We don't use medication, we don't use some outside tool, we use our own being in asking questions, in trying to be clever and ask the right question for the client. So you have to be a presence that doesn't disturb the client. And when my presence has a lot of issues of my own, the client will feel that.
We have a saying, at least some of us, which seems very simple and is very simple. It's follow the energy. If you focus on something in a session, something will happen and the next step will be there.
That's right.
And that may be good feelings, that may be bad feelings, that may be strange thought, it doesn't matter. The next thing that comes up is carrying the energy. So it's a very strange flow sometimes, but afterwards you see the logic and the beauty.
When I first started doing this work, I did great sessions from the beginning, and people would cry and they'd feel emotions, and somatics would turn on and turn off, and healings would occur. And after 2 years, it occurred to me that my clients never got angry. And I thought, okay, when things like that are happening, I have to look here. What's going on that none of my clients ever get angry? Obviously, I had fear of anger, my own personal issue, and so I needed to go get myself into some therapy and say, okay, hey, I got to work with this. And interestingly, after I did my own work on anger, I started getting all these angry clients. And I remember one client came in and he said, I feel so much rage. And I said, okay, feel your fist. And I put a cushion there and I said, okay, now feel. And he says, Trisha, if I ever let all this rage out, I will destroy your office. I said, go ahead. Of course, he never did because I put in boundaries. But the point is, I could hold the space for him to hold his anger.
I think the most difficult one that comes to mind was a woman who came to a workshop, and she'd observed our work in some video, and she said, I believe you work in pairs in your workshops, and someone asks questions and someone does a journey. And I said, yes, that's correct. And she said, I don't think I could do that work. And I said, why not? She said, I hate it. I went to a workshop once like that, a graph holotropic workshop, and people are sitting by you asking questions. She said, I don't want anyone to ask me questions. So I thought, how are we going to do this process if I can't ask questions to this woman? So finally I got the solution. I said, I'd like you to do a little experiment. I'd like you to close your eyes, and I'm going to do something. So she said, all right. So she closed her eyes, and I came up close to her and I said, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. What's your first reaction? She said, I won't tell you. I won't tell you anything. And then I realized what it was. She was stuck in a memory of an interrogation. And she'd been a stubborn prisoner and refused to speak. So interrogation, being asked questions, was the story itself. And it had got involved with the regression technique. So I simply used that as the way in, and where she went by repeating the phrase, I won't tell you. I won't tell you anything. You can ask me all the questions you want, I won't tell you a thing. She went to Russia back in the Stalinist era, and she was a scientist who had been part of a new movement that was considered heretical by, I think it was the Lysenko period. And this scientist was refusing to speak. And he was tortured and finally killed, but he never spoke out. So that was the story, but it was a very tough one to crack.
And when we finish working with someone, none of us could ever say we did it. That's right. That's one thing we're all very clear on. We don't do it. The people we work with do it.
One day I was looking at a magazine, and it was a picture of a glove, a dirty, cement-filled, fingers torn out glove, torn at the edges, and in the center there was an egg yolk. And with no thought, I cut it out, framed it, and hung it on the wall in my office. It hung there for a couple of months, and finally, one day a client came in and says, Trisha, you have all these beautiful things. What is that ugly thing doing on your wall? And again, with no thought, the words popped out of my mouth, that's my clients. I'm going, now what do I say? And the reality is that they come in and present you with a glove, and it's torn, and it's broken, and cracked in the fingers. But the perfection is always there. And you can access that when you're working with a person. And even if you can't, the person can't access it consciously, I know it's there. And so I am always in touch with working with that. So I see separation.
On my search for healing, I found that there are many mainstream psychotherapeutic methods, but also a variety of alternative methods, promising changes for the better. What is the difference between these mainstream methods and regression therapy?
to me it was quite liberating to get out of what I now see as the rather narrow world of childhood trauma. That if you're raised as a traditional psychologist, and particularly as I was in the psychoanalytic school, you're taught by Freud and the post-Freudians to look for every problem in childhood. So I was doing regression long before I'd heard of past lives, but regression to childhood. And in fact, past life regression borrows the word regression from the Freudians. The Freudians were the first to use it. They talk of a regressed state, a regressing back to infancy. And in a typical psychoanalysis, you learn in a sort of this waking dream state to free associate back to childhood, and memories will come spontaneously. Freudians don't guide you, they just let it happen.
It was my personal need in a case that could not be treated otherwise with the conventional techniques in psychology, for example, cognitive recognition therapy or methods of similar or psychotherapy.
What's also rewarding, although it's rewarding with a kind of almost bitterness in it, is of course we often come across people that have been very long in the mills of psychiatry or psychology, and it's so terribly ineffective, it's so terribly inefficient that to put that all aside and go straight to the problem and really resolve it, even when people have almost given up the possibility that this could be resolved, that really motivates me.
Well, it was interesting that Brian Weiss, the psychiatrist who tells his story of how he got into past lives, if you really address the question of free association back to the origin seriously, the unconscious mind doesn't hear just childhood. Brian Weiss famously said to a woman, "I want you to go back to the origin of your problem." And he forgot to say, in childhood. He assumed that everyone knew that all their problems started in childhood. Well, the unconscious heard, let's go back to the origin in another lifetime. And that's where this woman went. When you go to another lifetime, it is much more freeing, because issues that you've had, which really you've tried to squeeze into the box of a childhood trauma, and they don't fit. When, for example, you've grown up depressed and disliking crowds and hating certain kinds of weather, and you trace it back to a childhood event where, say, grandmother died and you went to the funeral, it was raining. Well, to a degree, this will explain your childhood depression. But if you really go deeper, you might find, and there's a famous case of this in television that Carol Bowman researched, you might find that this child was remembering a much greater tragedy, the Battle of the Somme, where thousands and thousands of soldiers died in rain and mud. And this child, that in the research she did, always got depressed when it was raining and didn't want to go out and play. And then one day he saw a documentary about the war, and he said, I was there. And then the memories started to come back. So if you allow depression to go back to the much greater memory, you'll find that we were involved in horrible mass trauma situations. Thousands of people die of a plague, thousands of people die in a war, thousands of people are uprooted from their country. And the pain and the suffering from these events is enormous. And it explains how some people really some children look as though they're born depressed. They came in upset. They came in little wise old souls. And it's nothing to do with potty training and whether they were breastfed. The Freudians are always looking for these explanations in the parents. So we get a much bigger picture of the origins of human suffering.
Simple example of a young girl hearing voices. They disturb her when she makes examinations at school. And there's a waiting list with the child psychiatrist who is going to treat her. And her mother is so fearful of this whole event, that her child hears voices, that she tells a friend, and that friend, her son heard voices 1 year ago. So this girl came to me only once, because I was the only one who asked, what do the voices say? So you take it seriously and you deal with it, and it was only one session, and it was gone. So that is evidence-based to me.
The other thing is that we're in the God job. Priests, doctors, and psychotherapists. And the God job is about my ego, and I know it all, and I'm going to tell you what you need to get better. You're going to think like this and act like this and behave like this and take this drug. And I would say that what we're doing is the opposite. We are, like you said, Roger, instead of diagnosing, analyzing, and giving dope, we're sitting back and we're saying, okay, what's happening? And that's not the God job.
There's nothing miraculous on the planet. There's no such thing as a miracle. People use that when they're trying to sell you something. This therapy does work. I have seen it work, and I am perfectly willing to prove that by working with you. I have never said or taught anything to anybody that I haven't used and found to be absolutely true in my private practice. I don't hype it. I don't just, go screaming through the streets yelling, "Hooray, I can save the world." I simply say, this is what I do, this is what I know it will do. I'll be glad to prove that to you if you like.
But if you don't want to listen to the evidence, you can discard anything. We know of cases that people have had terminal diseases, and after some work in regression therapy, they were cured. And the doctor said, apparently we have misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Well, you can do
Spontaneous diagnosis.
I think we just go on with our work and let it be.
I think it's shocking to traditional psychotherapists, the idea that you can get results in 2 or 3 sessions, because we've been conditioned from years of half a century or more of psychoanalysis to think that therapy takes a long, long time, and you're sort of chiseling away at this problem, and slowly you will get there. Where this work goes right to the core very, very quickly. And of course they're going to resist. And psychoanalysis itself was resisted for a long time. And one of the ways you dismiss something, you say it's not scientific. At the same time, those people who dismiss science refuse to look at the evidence.
Exactly.
There's a lot of narrow-mindedness in the scientific establishment. There's a lovely story about Sir Isaac Newton in the 18th century, who of course is considered the great physicist who brought in a whole new way of looking at the physical world. But it's not generally known that he was also an astrologer and an alchemist. This was a private part, and he didn't talk so much about that publicly because it's always been an underground subject. And apparently at a meeting of the Royal Society, some young intellectual came up to him who'd heard about his secret studies. And what he said to me epitomizes presumption. Apparently he came up and said, "Ah, Professor Newton, I gather you are studying these matters of astrology and alchemy and these things. How can a man like you, of such intellect and intelligence, waste their time on such nonsense?" And Newton kept his cool and said to him quite simply, "My dear sir, I have studied the matters, and you clearly have not."
And how about this lively bunch of people undertaking these journeys with so many? How do they all connect? What might we think of this association of international regression therapists called Earth? I learned a substantial number of regression therapists in Europe and also from all around the world have joined together to form the Earth Association. Above all else, this association aims to develop professional standards for the practice of regression therapy. Part of these standards is that all members commit to a code of conduct. To foster communication between therapists, Earth offers an internet platform with information for both therapists and those seeking help for their problems in life. Through the internet, therapists can also exchange experiences and discuss professional issues with each other, thus overcoming any geographical distances. Research is also an important part of the task taken on by Earth, and so that is also nurtured.
So we started Earth, I think, in 2003 on the First World Congress. First meeting was in 2006 in Frankfurt. Then already we are now international outside Europe, because the students that some teachers have in Brazil, like Roger Woolger and Hans TENDAM in India and TRISHA in Japan, and many more in many other places, they like to join in because it is a forum where you can get more information and where you can also show what you're doing and ask your fellow colleagues, tell me what you think about it.
Earth?
Earth.
It's the only one I know about. All the rest of them have all folded and gone away, or they're in the process of folding and going away. And I think these people are very brave to do this. I wouldn't take this on for a bit.
I love it because you have so many people from so many different countries. And that's exciting because this afternoon at lunch we were talking about Out of the Turk and Rumi's poems and the origin of all of this in Turkey and the Middle East and with two Turkish people who are here. And so you have different concepts, different ways of being. Here you have people from all over different countries on the board. So I think it provides a much more expanded concept of how to interact around the world with these methods.
A mouse and a frog meet every morning on the riverbank. They sit in a nook on the ground and talk. Each morning, the second they see each other, they open easily, telling stories and dreams and secrets, empty of any fear or suspicious holding back. To watch and to listen to these two is to understand how, as it's written, sometimes when two beings come together, Christ becomes visible.
We started it to combine those people who might feel alone in their countries because there aren't so many yet, like our colleague in Russia who is in an area where he's the only one. So we started to combine people and to enable exchange and interaction. You need the intersubjective community of the field. I can do something and somebody else can judge it and can ask me, why did you do this, why did you do that? We are comparing our structures, our methods. And Earth is an effort to invite everybody practicing regression therapy, and in the same time we learn from each other and support each other to bring better trainings and to feel more certain about what you are bringing, because your colleagues have already told you what they do or don't like about it. I think the value of Earth is quite big, and it can be even more extensive than I can judge now.
I think it's doing incredible work, and I hope it will grow and grow and reach more people. I certainly support it in that.
At a certain moment, people will look for a therapist, and they want to have somebody who dares to be challenged by his colleagues. And so when you are a member of Earth, it at least shows that you are up to date and not afraid to share your issues with your colleagues. It must be a quality mark also, not only a ground for us to find each other, but a quality instrument. Well, Earth is the beginning of a lot more.
I wonder whether this regression approach has any future. What do the experts think?
There are so many people out there who would use this method if they knew about it.
Oh, in fact, there are 3 wishes still. It's research, research, and research. And of course, good research and publishing the results. Yeah, that's really what we need. As few publicity as possible, so that we can do our work calmly, and it will expand anyway, simply because of the results.
I wish the academic psychologists would, I mustn't say something rude, would wake up a bit and see that there's a much bigger world that we have to offer, a much bigger picture of therapy. I think not just the academic psychologists, the media have very narrow minds in the Anglo-Saxon world. And we need some really good PR to get into the media, to get into the academies, and show that this is one of the most effective therapies that there are on the planet, and that we need to let go of these narrow ideas of what the soul is and what consciousness is. Much bigger picture that we have to share.
Slow growth in a solid manner. Don't grow too fast, but grow and spread as we are doing now. Solid, quality. And I hope that many people in need will know how to find us, how to find a regression therapist. That is my wish, because it's so needed. This is such a beautiful field. It's so needed. Yeah, I think that's my wish.
So there may be so much change that one day our therapy as we know it will also come to its end. And this reminds me of that old joke that somebody is saying about sex: if they ever invent something better, I keep doing it at the site. If they ever invent a better process, I will continue doing this at the site.
doubts have been eased, many of my questions answered, and so I will start this journey inside. I take my courage, my responsibility, and my will to solve my problems, to soothe my pains and free myself from obstacles and constraints, and step forward into the future, healing the past. It will be for the better. Let's move into the future.
He actually did that.
Welcome and thank you for being here. Hans, Marion, Roger, Trisha. Oh shit.
Fred, this is Fred. We found him. We brought him along.
My name is not shit.
He was oh shit. Oh shit. Oh great shit.
I have an initial. Oh.
Yeah.
You are the only student member here in this group.